Someone requested that we do a story for Hund and Eager Bottling Works, so that's what we're going to do today. I've done a lot of requests, and if you have a request, you can let me know either in the comments or you can always email me at antiquebottlestories@outlook.com. I'm up for any story as long as I can dig something up for it. So come join me for this episode of Antique Bottle Stories. Today's story begins in 1875. First of all, let me apologize in advance for my lack of German accent. I'll do my best to not butcher the names. So, two dudes named Frederick Dumke and Henry Nash decide to go into business. Now, Frederick Dumke was born about 1844 in Germany. I didn't realize that there was going to be so many Frederick Dumkes out there, so it kind of got confusing. I tried to stick to the St. Joseph ones. Now, there's not a lot of records out there that I can confirm are him, so we don't know that much about him. The 1910 census shows 66-year-old Frederick widowed and living with his daughter, so we know at least that much. Now, Henry Nash was born in Tennessee in 1828, so he's almost got 50 years on Frederick Dumke. He was a grocer most of his life. I don't know whose idea it was to go into the beer business or how they know each other. According to this newspaper that recalls the history of the company, it says Dumka and Nash were in business for only 2 years when Nash decided to sell his shares to a guy named Henry Gleitz. Now, I'm not sure if the dates are off or if Nash went into the beer business somewhere else, but here in 1880 we see Henry Nash with his wife and kids, but it says wholesale beer dealer. Now, this is 3 years after him and Dumka split up. So anyways, we're done following him though, and he ends up moving to California and he dies over there in 1890 at the age of 62. Now, Henry Gleitz was born in 1831 in Germany. Now, Gleitz and Dumka end up in business for only about 3 years, and then in 1881, Gleitz sold his interest to William Hund, although he probably pronounced it Hund. Gleitz ends up owning a hotel, and he was apparently very well known in St. Joseph. His obituary speaks warmly of him. He dies in 1906 at the age of 75. Now, William Hund was born in 1854 in Germany. According to his 1900 census, it says he immigrated in 1872, which would have made him 18 years old. He married Amelia, who was born in Missouri, and they had 5 kids, but only 4 survived. This 1883 article states that Dumka and Hund just received a carload of Anheuser beer. I'm assuming they mean a train carload. Also, another 1883 Anheuser beer ad. And here's a cool sign that someone on the internet found. Also, in 1883, a deed granted to Dumka and Hund for a lot in St. Joseph. Towards the end of 1884, the newspaper catches up with 40-year-old Mr. Dumka, who just returned from a trip to Germany with his buddy, Mr. Texter. They had been gone for almost 6 months, returning to their old stomping grounds in Germany. Each of the men brought home a bride. Well, they both brought home a woman, which they both married in a double ceremony when they arrived back in New York. And the following year, a bouncing baby boy for Mr. Dumka. This one made me giggle. Did you ever try it? Wiener beer. No, I can't say that I have. I think I would have known if I did. Dumka and Hund have an 1886 ad stating that they're dealers in Milwaukee and St. Joe premium beer, porter, ale, vinegar. They also manufacture apple cider, soda water, ginger ale, sarsaparilla, strawberry, seltzer water, etc. I wanted to look at the address in this 1887 directory, 402 and 404 Main Street. That would put us right here in the middle of this building, so I doubt that's the same building. In 1887, we see a few wanted ads looking to buy some 20,000 bushels of cider apples. In 1888, Dumka and Hund are still together, but in 1889, Hund and Eager are now together. Dumka isn't listed with anything at the moment. By the next year, Dumka isn't listed in the directory for St. Joseph. He moved. So we say bye to Mr. Dumka now. He died in Michigan in 1915 at the age of 71. So here's our current chart. Now, Louis Eger was born in 1860 in Missouri, but his dad was born in Germany, and in this 1870 census we see that his dad was a brewer. Eger and Hund are pretty young chaps, 29 and 35 when they partnered up. A couple years earlier in 1887, we see that Louis Eger is partnered with a man named Martin Barman, and they're running a saloon in New Ulm Park. So a year after Hund and Eager partnered, in this 1890 directory, we see that they moved to a new location, 1226 Frederick Avenue. So let's go look that one up. It currently happens to be a brewing company. So a few years later, in 1895, there's yet another address, 421 North 2nd Street. At the bottom of the page it says it's at the corner of 2nd Street and Robideau. So this is what it looked like, and here's that corner now. So I'm not sure which corner, but it's not there now. It looks like this once bustling part of town isn't really traveled anymore. Now, looking at this photo a little closer, I noticed this building back there, and I tried to compare it to these back here. So let's zoom in. Okay, the windows fit this building more than the other one. So that's this building. So it was on this corner then. So moving on to 1906, here's an ad in the paper. Pabst Milwaukee beer, apple cider, soda water, ginger ale, and vinegar. Still on the corner of 2nd and Robideau Street. It's now been about 10 years at this location. Now we're up to 1908. Louis Eger dies. He's only 47. It says he had undergone a serious operation 2 weeks ago. It doesn't say much about the operation, but he apparently died from complications from it. It says he was born and raised in St. Joseph and was a quiet, genial guy, never married. He was partnered with Hund for about 20 years. After Louis Eger died in 1908, William Hund took full control of the company. This book says that Hund and Eager Bottling Company was reorganized with $25,000 by William Hund and Hund's brother-in-law, Mr. A.W. Heffley, and a Mr. Schmaltz. In 1910, it was newsworthy when someone purchased an automobile, so they reported that Mr. Hund had bought an Oldsmobile Special, and here's a picture of one that I found online. Skipping ahead to 1916, we see that even though Eger died, Hund kept the name Hund and Eager Bottling Company, and we're still at the same location. We also see some of the company's officers. Hund is president, Heffley is vice president, and Schmaltz is secretary. Then we see Louis Hund is treasurer. Now Louis is one of William's sons, who is now 25. And I can't help but wonder if he named his son after his friend Louis Eger. His other son, named William Jr., was in the military and he served overseas. Now here in 1920 we see William's household. William is 65 now, William Jr. is 30, and Louis is 28. And they're all listed as working at the bottling company. William also has 3 daughters, all currently single and living at home. The following year, in 1921, William Hund dies at 66 years old. I found a little history on his house. His house still stands, but it's in bad shape, and right now the bank owns it and they're trying to find someone who will buy it and restore it. Moving on to 1924, we see that William Hund's 2 sons take over the company. William Jr. becomes president, and Louis is listed as treasurer. Heffley is still vice president, and Schmaltz seems to be gone. Right around this time, we see the newspapers notating that they are now distributing for Coca-Cola. I just remembered that this is during the Prohibition, which ran from 1920 to 1933, so that explains why there's no more beer. By the way, we're still in the 2nd Street location, which now makes it 31 years that we've been at this location. So here's a photo dated 1923. And whatever this building is also gone too. 1930, people are now listening to radio programs, and there's a Coca-Cola program at 9:30 p.m. on NBC. Yes, it's the same NBC that you're thinking. I guess Hund and Eager sponsors a program on there. Also in 1930, there's also a little slogan here. In St. Joseph, they call it Coke Time, the pause that refreshes. I stumbled on a website that had some photos and memorabilia for this company, and I've linked it below. And this photo is from that site. 1931, William Jr. died at just age 41, so his little brother Louis now becomes president. Louis is married to Imogene, who is almost 20 years younger than him, and they have 5 kids, 2 boys and 3 girls. According to that website that I just talked about, since they were distributing for Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola didn't want alcoholic products in the same building, so around 1935 they opened a second warehouse on the same street. Now skipping to 1940, we have a pause, refresh slogan now. It's still 5 cents though. Still in 1940, we're still listening to radio programs, and if I'm correct, I don't think TV really picked up until the early 50s. This advertisement talks about a feature called Where'd to Go Tonight, and it says it's heard each weekday at 6:15 p.m., and it's a service that tells the local activities that are happening in St. Joseph each evening, and this program is also sponsored by Hund and Eager. Now we're up to 1954, and there's a guy named Jesse Schisler who just received an excellent promotion at Hund and Eager to the sales manager. And just a few years later, Louis Hund dies in 1956 at the age of 65. His obituary says that Hund was as modest as he was big-hearted. It says his charities were matters that he did not discuss, but reporters of this paper can remember well Depression days when many a family was kept in food, shelter, and warmth, all because of the generosity of Louis Hund. It says for more than 40 years he sponsored baseball, softball, basketball, and bowling teams here. The following year it shows his wife Imogene is now president, with another family member named Esther Hund as vice president and treasurer, and a Mrs. Lillian Ridge as secretary. Then, 3 years after her husband, in 1959, Imogene died at just the age of 48. Their youngest child is only 10 years old. Her oldest is 27. The next year, we see a guy named Delmar Steinbach is running the company. Louis Jr. is still vice president. Mrs. Lillian Ridge and Esther Hund are still listed as well. There's a little announcement in the paper showing Mr. Steinbach. And just 2 years later, in 1962, the bottling firm is sold to Kansas City Coca-Cola Bottling Company. And this one says, operations in St. Joseph ceased last Friday. According to this particular article, it says Louis Hund Jr. was president of the firm at the time of the sale. So here's the completed chart. And here's the chart to date your bottles. I tried to find examples of each bottle. There was no luck finding Dumka and Nash, but here's one for Dumka and Gleitz, and here's a few for Dumka and Hund, and here's some for Hund and Eager. And here's an interesting Babe Ruth memorial coin that says Hund and Eager on the back. Around 1905, they sold Coca-Cola, and by the 1920s, they stopped production of all their other flavors. So all these would not date past the 1920s. Alright, well, I think that's about all I could find for this one. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.